Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Daniel Lyne Ministries Teaching. This is your faith for today, and what I want to be discussing over the coming weeks is the foundations. We're going to be turning this into a full course, so for now it'll just be coming out on YouTube or as a podcast, wherever you are watching or listening to this. You'll be seeing it as it goes, but over time as we get this together, I'm going to be bundling it together and putting it into a concise video course to make it easier, so that if you're coming along perhaps later on, it could even be months or years after I've released these videos, you'll be able to find it in one neat spot. But over the last few months, there's been a lot going on globally within the church, globally with what's been taking place over in the Middle East, with Israel, with Iran, Syria, a lot of signs of the end times, but a lot of prophecy being fulfilled as well. There's all of that taking place. In other segments of the church, we've got revival, we've got a renewal of desire for holiness, for purity, for prayer, for salvations, and that's all good. And then in other sectors of the church, we're seeing this progressive departure from the faith as people just sort of forget what they believe or why we believe it, or challenge and question what is going on. And this has kind of led me to this point where I thought it is so important that, yes, whilst I am 100% on faith and my ministry is really about encouraging and building faith, it's so important to recognize that we can't have faith in something that we don't even understand what it is that we believe. When we don't have any foundation, there's no ability to build faith on top of that foundation. Or better said, we can't have faith in something that we don't even understand or know or believe ourselves. And so many people try and have faith in God, and then they question God's existence, and then that undermines their faith because they've never laid that foundation, and it falls apart. Perhaps you're someone yourself that you've been questioning some of these things. You're seeing what's taking place in the world political stage with the same-sex marriage, or with abortion, or with just the concept of polygamous or monogamous relationships, and questioning, well, what does the Bible say? Because of course we've got examples in the Old Testament where Jacob had multiple wives, where Abraham had Sarah and then had Hagar, and then you've got these concepts that then people will bring out and say this is biblical. But we need to come back, and that's what this teaching series is going to be about, coming back to the beginning. Jesus said it so many times. You have heard it said, but it was not so from the beginning. Or this is the way it is, but it was not so from the beginning. That beginning, that word that Jesus so often uses, we get it translated as it wasn't from the beginning or from the start of time, but what Jesus was really saying was actually the Hebrew word bereshit. Now I know that he spoke in Aramaic, but he's speaking to Jews. And I fully am persuaded that many times, because it tells us, and he said this being translated. And of course that would have been spoken in Hebrew, or that would have been spoken in Greek, depending on which one it was. So we know that yes, he predominantly spoke Aramaic, but there would have been times where he spoke a Hebrew word or a Greek word, depending on the context and who it was he was talking to. And so many times Jesus would have said, but it was not so from Bereshit. Now, to us, that might not make much sense, but to a Jew, Bereshit is the name of the first book of the Bible, or the first book of the Torah for them. Being what we call Genesis, this is what it is. And so Jesus is so often saying, but it was not so from the first book of Genesis. And so what I'm wanting to do over the course of time, I'm not sure how many videos this will take up. We're going to be going verse by verse. You might think, why did I put them in this order? What we're going to be doing is going, in a sense, verse by verse, line by line, precept upon precept, as it's called, to look at the doctrines of our faith, the doctrine of the Trinity, the doctrine of man, the doctrine of Christ, the doctrine of creation, all of these different things that some people think doctrine is boring, but yet if we don't understand why we believe what we believe, everything else falls apart, because without a solid foundation, we've got nothing to build upon. And that is why so many churches are departing from the faith, not because they're intending evil, not because of any other reason, but they've not solidified the value of the first 10 chapters of Genesis in their own life, in their own doctrine. And so I want to encourage you, if you've never really studied these first 10 chapters of the book, if you've never really looked in depth at what they're telling us and about the foundation they're laying, then I invite you to come on this journey. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and click that notification bell so that as I release these videos and podcasts over the coming weeks, wherever it is that you're watching or listening, you'll get notified each time it comes, and you'll be able to follow along as we go through and just lay a solid foundation as to what we believe, why we believe it, and why it's so important for us to hang on to this. Because as Jude reminded us, that we need to contend for the faith once delivered to the saints. And then as Timothy said, that be careful, because in the last days people will depart from the faith. And this is what we're seeing around us. So it's so important that we ground everything we do, everything we believe in the Word of God, and particularly in these first 10 chapters. So come along. I invite you to join me tomorrow as we start with Genesis chapter 1, and we just look at that foundational thought of who is God? Where did he come from? How did he exist? And is there a creation versus evolution argument even to be had? So I invite you to join me tomorrow, and I look forward to that. God bless, and bye for now.